Chronicler's note. Spring, I dare say, is my second favorite season. Cool air, rolling thunder, and the smell of life returning to dead earth would normally soothe the nerves. Sadly, my nerves are presently under assault by the latest missives from my lady and the ever-wayward elf-maid Valoret.
The Misfits found themselves halted, not by some fresh revelation, but by the far more immediate danger of Harmony Gold attempting to explain herself. For the brave little priestess, still red-eyed and stubborn, had apparently concluded that the swiftest route out of Brenna's outrage was to insist, quite firmly, that Brenna now bore responsibility for our child. Brenna, for her part, understood none of this, wished to understand less, and promised that once they were safely out of the catacombs, explanations would be extracted first and lives ended second. The others, displaying either courage or catastrophic instinct, attempted to mediate. It did not help. In search of either distraction or mercy, Harmony threw open the next heavy stone door. Beyond waited another stretch of catacombs, lined with upright skeletons posed in eerie stillness, as though they had once been solemn guardians and had since fallen into much worse employment. Then came the clatter of bone from around the bend, and with it, the true welcome. A skeletal hound and a skeleton archer, the latter making the unmistakable motions of silent laughter. Thus did the Misfits learn that no, this place was not nearly done with them yet. Harmony reacted first, and as so often happens in battle, some sharper and more commanding part of her seemed to take hold. She barked orders, called for the dog to be brought down, and struck out while the others tried to make sense of a battlefield so narrow that every step forward risked trapping them all. Barden immediately saw the danger and began to fall back. Thomas raised his flintlocks, only to discover that shooting a bony hound in a cramped corridor is rather harder than it sounds. Adrian, already regretting every life choice that had brought him here, held his position rather than force the bottleneck. And then Brenna, still furious, stormed forward. Unfortunately, righteous fury and battlefield precision are not always the same thing. Still caught up in Harmony's increasingly impossible explanation, Brenna drove in hard and managed the spectacular feat of lodging her greatsword directly into the hound's mouth. In an instant, she was left disarmed. The hound was better armed than before, and the skeleton archer chose that exact moment to fire at Harmony. It was, in every sense, a catastrophe. Yet, even as pain blossomed through the line, Harmony still turned first to healing, calling on Harula to mend Brenna while shouting back with utter conviction that the kiss had been an emergency and that any educated person knew a prince or princess was required to break such enchantments. Brenna, to her credit, seemed less enlightened than horrified. The corridor battle worsened quickly. Adrian raised his defenses and edged closer. Amalia whispered healing over the front rank. Thomas managed a solid shot, and then, in the next breath, the sort of miserable near miss only dice and fate can conspire to produce. Brenna, still weaponless and still under assault, kept snarling for the others to move while demanding every detail of what in all the gods' names had happened to her. The enemy, meanwhile, remained cruelly efficient. The hound kept tearing at the front line, and the archer continued to pepper Harmony whenever the opportunity arose. Then came the worst of it. The skeletal hound lunged again, and this time, Brenna took too much of the blow. The bite tore into her throat, hard enough to drop her outright. For one awful moment, all the noise of the corridor narrowed into that single fact. Brenna de Lorraine, The wall of steel and fury, who had so often stood between the others and ruin, had fallen. Harmony did not hesitate. She threw herself beneath Brenna's weight, dragged her bodily out of immediate danger, and retreated, apologizing all the while as if the blood on her hands were accusation enough. Then, kneeling over her friend and soaked in that same blood, she called again and again on Harula's grace, wrenching Brenna back from the brink through desperate healing and sheer refusal to let go. Around them, the others fought to keep the collapse from becoming a rout. Adrian, realizing the hound could be harmed by what would heal the living, twisted his magic into an answer and sent healing force against the undead beast while trying to keep his allies from bleeding out around him. Barden held position to cover withdrawal. Amalia stepped directly into the corridor as a living barricade, dark magic coating her blade as she resolved to stop the enemy there if need be. Thomas continued firing, though fortune had turned sour in his hands. Meanwhile, Harmony, half-healer and half-panicked younger sister, broke.
"We need to retreat!"
She yelled through the tight knot in her throat and tears.
"We need to. Brenna's barely holding on, and this is too much for one delve."
Amalia answered that call in the way only Amalia can, calmly, without drama, and with a blade stroke fit to carve certainty from chaos. When the hound sprang again, she met it head-on and cut it down with a devastating burst of force, shattering the thing before it could finish what it had started. At last, the bone beast fell. Yet, victory brought little comfort. Thomas's shots still went wide. The remaining skeleton archer, now enraged by the death of its companion, drew a finger across its throat in a universal promise of murder and leveled its bow toward Thomas. And there, with Brenna half alive, Harmony frantic, Adrian strained, Barden braced, Amalia holding the line, and the last archer still hungry for blood, the Misfits' advance ground to a halt on the edge of another disaster.
Meta summary. This continuation leans beautifully into one of the campaign's greatest strengths, the Merry Misfits' ability to turn from absurd comedy to genuine danger in the span of a single heartbeat. What begins as an utterly unhinged misunderstanding about kisses, eggs, and where babies come from immediately crashes into a brutally tight corridor fight, and the contrast works wonderfully. It keeps the party feeling human, ridiculous, affectionate, and half a sentence away from disaster, while never letting the danger lose its teeth. More importantly, the emotional spine of the scene belongs to Harmony and Brenna. Brenna's fury remains funny right up until the moment she falls, and then the tone shifts hard. Harmony dragging her to safety, desperately using her miracles and praying over Brenna in tears, refusing to abandon her, gives the whole sequence real weight. It reinforces what prior sessions have been building so well, that beneath all the bickering, table threats, and head-smacking, these fools have become deeply attached. The fight itself also does a fine job of showing each character through pressure rather than speeches. Harmony as the frantic heart, Brenna as the wounded shield, Amalia as the calm wall, Adrian as the weary pragmatist adapting on the fly, Barden as steady support, and Thomas as useful but not yet fully settled into the company. Altogether, it feels like an excellent descent point in the session, the moment where chapel crawl hijinks give way to the sobering realization that this delve may be more than the party can safely finish in one go.